Alrighty, guys. So a series that I certainly was not looking forward to was Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man just a month ago. 1 month ago, if you had asked me, hey, what's your anticipation level for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man? I would have said out of, 10, maybe a 2. I just really was not interested in this series. Not because I don't love Spider-Man. In fact, Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters, fictional characters of all time. I love Spider-Man. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Spider-Man Homecoming, amazing. I think Spider-Man Far From Home, severely underrated by MCU fans, and Spider-Man No Way Home was obviously awesome. Love Andrew, love Tobey in their own ways. I like the animated Spider-Verse films a decent bit, not as much as everyone else, but Spider-Man, he's my guy. Love Spider-Man. But this Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man just didn't look interesting to me. It looked kind of cheap, the animation style. I mean, sure, it looked kind of interesting in terms of just the stylistic elements, but just the functionality of the animation just didn't look super appealing to me, and then just the trailers made it look kind of cheesy and corny and almost like it was a kid's show in a weird way, so I really wasn't excited. But then we talked about the first reviews coming out, the first reactions rather coming out of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. They were overwhelmingly positive, and so again, I mean, I am always somebody who says, I've said this many, many times on this channel, I go into any project, no matter how uninterested, unenthused I am about the project, I go into every single one with an open mind, because if I end up liking the project, then that's a win for me. And if I don't, well, that's what it is, right? But if I don't like the project, then it's just, my expectations were met. But if I do, keeping an open mind, that's just a huge win for me. Those are the best kinds of things. And so, hearing those good reactions, hearing those good reviews, I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. Now, I am going to do spoiler discussions for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm not going to go as in-depth as I did with Agatha All Along, with Penguin, Rings of Power. I'm not going to make these like 20-minute, segments in the podcast. But I'm going to just briefly talk about each episode, and then I'll obviously give my overall thoughts. So this is going to be a spoiler discussion for the first 2 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. If you haven't seen them, just make sure to come back once you have. Let's talk about them in spoiler details. Guys, this show is way better than it has any right to be. Is it perfect? No, I don't think so. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. I was, again, this is one of those pleasant surprises where I go, hey, I had zero expectation for it. Something like a Lego movie, for example, just really didn't like the trailer. I thought, what's the point of this, right? I literally said, what's the point of this? Not to say that, look, I mean, out of all the animated projects that they've done, I mean, they've made 3 seasons of What If that I just really haven't liked. So it's not to diminish that whole point that I was making in the previous segment, or the previous episode where I was talking about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, where I was saying I just wish that it feels like they're just throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall. But luckily, this strand has stuck, and by they I mean the Marvel Animation division. But this strand, it stuck. I really like this. So let's go through the first couple episodes, just give some overall thoughts, going into a couple details here and there, and then we'll talk about the series as a whole, or the first 2 episodes as a whole, rather. So what I really like is that they, in the first episode, they start out here, they're using the same font as Civil War. So you're already getting set up that this is not the MCU, but it's sort of adjacent to it. I was wondering how much they were going to go into that, and we get into that much, or not much later, but towards the end of the episode. I really like the dynamic between May and Peter. I think that it's really cute. And then we get this sort of battle with this weird Venom creature. I thought it was actually going to be the Chitauri from 2012. It seems like they're always going back to that, but it's just this giant Venom creature and Strange. Is it a multiverse Strange? Is it a multiverse Venom? I have no idea. No clue. Guess it doesn't really matter. And then he gets bitten by a multiverse spider. And honestly, that was one of the parts of the show that I was a little underwhelmed by. I was like, really? I mean, I get it. We don't really have time. We don't really need to go through his whole spider bite thing, but just a random spider from the sky and he gets bit by it? Okay, whatever. And so, I think at the beginning of the show, I was just like, how seriously does the show want us to take it? And it didn't seem like it wanted us to take it very seriously, because the beginning, while cute, was very goofy. And I mean, the Strange Venom fight was okay. It was fine. And it just feels like the Spider-Man from the MCU, right? That what it felt like was the Spider-Man from the MCU, the Tom Holland version, was just translated into a kiddish cartoon. And not everything about it was, kiddie, but it just kind of felt like a more Saturday morning cartoon version of the MCU Spider-Man, which it has its own charm, it has its own appeal. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting thing to see. Then we get to we get introduced to all of the cast of friends here. So Nico, which I really one of the things I really liked about these first couple episodes is that the cast of friends feel just as real as they did in Spider-Man Homecoming. With, Spider-Man Homecoming had MJ and Ned and Liz and Flash and all these other characters. And this one manages to introduce a lot of other characters that we don't, are not the same, but just as well, just as fast. Instead of Liz, we have this girl named Pearl that he really likes. It seems like a very similar, in Spider-Man Homecoming, he liked the senior girl, and here it seems like that girl is Pearl. Nico is kind of the Ned, right? The best friend. And then we have, I guess there's no Flash parallel because Lonnie's cool. Lonnie's really cool. And, I was going through the episode and I was like, yeah, it's cute. It's fun. It feels like Homecoming, it's Spider-Man Homecoming, and I really like the friends. And then the show kind of pivots, right? Because, Peter's doing his thing. He's kind of Spider-Maning, and he's just being goofy and doing the whole Instagram live thing, which I was like, whatever. It is what it is. I wasn't hating the show or anything. I just was like, yeah, it's cute. But then the show decides, hey, let's kind of grow up here a little bit. And so, as the camera follows Lonnie home, the shots where the police car is trailing him, I was like, wow, wait, this show is actually not afraid to deal with real world, just real world things. And I was like, wow, that's actually kind of cool that the show is going to do that. Like a show that is sort of feeling like it's geared towards kids. I'm not saying that as a negative thing per se. I'm just saying that the whole feel kind of felt cartoonish in that way. But the show then isn't afraid to kind of dig into characters that are, he's like, hey, I'm the star quarterback. I am, I seem like I have everything together, but I'm actually, really smart, and I don't have everything together because there are a lot of things that I'm dealing with for this character of Lonnie, right? We see on the subway that the mom and her son are kind of, scared of him. And that's again, a really sad thing to see. But these are, just like how even Falcon and Winter Soldier was dealing with real world topics as well. Like when Sam got pulled over by the police car, and Bucky was like, wait, he didn't do anything wrong. If you guys remember that scene from Falcon and Winter Soldier, I was really impressed that the show took the time to develop a character like Lonnie and give us, some backstory to it. And so I thought that was really, really well done. So then, we have Peter doing his Peter thing, and he's being Spider-Man, he's enjoying it, and then he goes and finds a DVD player at the dumpster. And at that point I was like, oh yeah, cute little callback to Civil War. I like it. And then we hear that music from Civil War, and all of a sudden it clicked with me, and I was like, oh, this is Civil War. It's just going to be a little bit different. So I actually really like that because, there are multiverse versions of Spider-Man. We've seen Andrew, we've seen Tobey. I like that this is an MCU, Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, just in a couple universes down, not like 50 universes down where Andrew might be from, or not 100 where Tobey might be from. This is just like a couple units down, where it's most things are similar, most things are the same. I could even imagine that up until that point, maybe the MCU Spider-Man was pretty similar. Obviously he probably didn't live in a world with Oscorp and all that kind of stuff, but we saw a little keychain with Iron Man, right, on Aunt May's car. So Iron Man does exist in this world, but you can imagine that most of the things were really similar. In fact, they basically recreated the scene where Peter met Tony in Civil War with, this time, Norman Osborn. And I finished the first episode and I was like, wow, that was really good. It was shockingly good. So then we head into episode 2 here, and we have, Peter sort of, being to cultivate his friendship with Lonnie. He's being adored by the football players, which is really interesting. And now we get to see the internship, and we get to kind of, dig into what Norman Osborn is up to. We don't really get to, I guess, in this episode. I think that'll be a big theme in the next coming episodes, but we get to see the internship at the lab, which Norman Osborn offered Peter. And it's a Wakandan girl, Wakandan scientist, and then Amadeus Cho and another girl. So yeah, Amadeus Cho, Hulk, a version of Hulk at least, and so that's interesting. Wonder if he's going to turn into Hulk later on. Also, I should mention, by the way, I looked up a little bit about Lonnie earlier on because there are a lot of characters in this series that are allusions or references to comic book characters, and Lonnie will become a much more important character later on, as it turns out. But I'm not going to reveal that here for those of you guys who don't want to know. You guys can look it up if you do, but yeah. Speaking of important characters, though, to the lore of Spider-Man, Dr. Connors is here, which is cool. She's missing an arm, as just like the Reese Ifans character was in Spider-Man, or The Amazing Spider-Man. So, yeah, a lot of comic book characters hanging around here. And, then, there's the whole thing about Spider-Man or Peter Parker hitting it off and doing really well. But then, of course, his fatal flaw, he sees someone in trouble and he has to go save them. And he goes and fights this fire person, which I really don't know who that is. You can let me know in the comments who that character was in the comics. I'm sure that they were some important Spider-Man villain that I just don't know. But I also like how, just like with Lonnie, they're dealing with real world issues in kind of subtle ways, or not so subtle ways, but just kind of putting it in these, in these scenes. And the one that I caught here was the fact that this guy was like, yeah, I was hired to demolish and burn down buildings so that, you know, people can build them for cheap, whoever is hiring them. And I think that is a really interesting angle and a really interesting, you know, reflection of what people can do to manipulate the system and do all that kind of stuff. So I think, again, just really interesting stuff here. And I really think also, you know, throughout these first 2 episodes that Hudson Thames, I believe is the actor's name who's voicing Spider-Man, does a really good approximation of Tom Holland while being unique. But, you know, I can totally just close my eyes and be like, yeah, no, that's like, again, a version of the MCU Spider-Man that's just a couple doors down from the Earth 616, which I really like. I really, really like that. And then, you know, at the end of the episode, of course, we reveal that Norman Osborn knows now that Spider-Man is Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And that was to be expected. You know, that's something that we kind of saw coming at the very end of the episode. And that's it. So, guys, the first 2 episodes of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, look, I'm not going to say it's the best show that's ever been made. I don't know that yet. There are things like it's still kind of, you know, bordering on cutesy and whatever, but a good story is a good story is a good story, right? Even if at some points it's sort of, you know, a kind of a cartoony kids show or whatever, which I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's sort of the impression that I got from some scenes, because overall the show is still not afraid to delve into, you know, the MCU Spider-Man. It's not afraid to delve into some deeper themes, and I think that I respect it for it. And a good story is a good story is a good story. And if they're willing to, you know, really dive into Peter Parker as a character, just in a different universe, a different iteration of the MCU Spider-Man, I'm all down for it. You know, I'm really excited to see what happens from here. So yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasant surprise. You know, it's always a good thing to be pleasantly surprised, I should say, by anything where you just had no expectations for and you end up really liking it. We'll see where the show goes from here, because again, you know, it's first 2 episodes, but I am looking forward to the next couple episodes, and we'll continue to do these spoiler discussions as long as it's fun to do. So, guys, have you seen the first 2 episodes of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and what do you think about them? Are you enjoying this show as much as I am? Because I found myself really enjoying it. Let me know in the comments down below.